The Liberty Lacrosse team recently capped off one of the program's best seasons, with the Flames climbing as high as number 3 in the nation. With the MCLA National Tournament coming up, the Flames are looking to capture the program's first ever national championship.
And sitting down with me now is the head coach of the men's lacrosse team, Kyle McQuillan. Kyle, thanks for sitting down with us.
No problem.
Kyle, let's go back to last season. First, talk a little about how you guys qualified for your first ever Division I national championship tournament and how that kind of really set the stage for what was going to happen as far as momentum and expectations for this season.
Yeah, last year was a great year. It was the first time that we'd qualified for the MCLA Division I national tournament. So to be able to do that and kind of check that box, I guess, was a big step for us. And then to not only go, but to win our first round game against Concordia and take Chapman, a perennial powerhouse, to overtime was definitely kind of just confirmed to us that we didn't just earn the right to be there, but we belong to be there and that we can compete with some of the best teams. So building off of that momentum this year, I think there wasn't that added pressure, I guess, of making nationals. This year we just tried to focus on our regular season and ultimately trying to win an SELC championship. And unfortunately, going undefeated in the regular season, coming up short in the SELCs was a tough pill to swallow. But we've still got the opportunity ahead of us to go to Salt Lake City and try to salvage what has been thus far a very successful season, only having one loss to date. You kind of have to remind yourself of that every once in a while, that this is still probably one of the best runs we've had in program history. And although not winning that SELC championship is something that is a frustration for all of us, and there's no other way to describe it other than it just kind of being a failure, we've still got something that we can do this week to try to kind of course correct a little bit.
And going into the season, I mean, you touched on it a little bit, being undefeated, first ever undefeated regular season. Was that something that as it started building that started becoming a goal of yours? Or is it more so like it was just something that when it started happening, you're like, this is something that could potentially come to fruition? It
was never something that we aspired to. I think every coach will probably tell you the same thing, is that you just kind of take one game at a time. And I think the wins and the undefeated regular season was just a byproduct of the time and the energy and the effort that the guys put in, and the depth and the level of talent that we've got on this team. So it's definitely, it was nice, but I'm sure, and I'm probably speaking on behalf of the whole team, that we might have traded a loss here or there throughout the season for an SELC championship, because that was one of our primary goals. And but it's still definitely something that the guys earned, and it's something they can definitely be proud of.
And yeah, talking about the SELC championships, obviously I know it didn't end the way that you guys were hoping, but a lot of valuable experience was learned, not only playing a pretty solid team in Central Florida, but even more so than the eventual winners in South Carolina, a team that you faced twice already this season. So talk a little about what kind of that loss kind of taught you guys as your team.
Yeah, I mean, the SELC, I think you got to give a lot of credit to South Carolina and just the SELC as a whole, bringing a lot of really talented and developing teams kind of to the forefront of the MCLA. I think there at one point we had 3 teams in the top 6 and 5 or 6 teams in the top 25, which is very different from even 4 to 5 years ago. And having the opportunity to send 4 teams to nationals is pretty significant as well. But being able to play a game against South Carolina and coming up short, a team that we'd beaten, as you mentioned, in the regular season, was tough. But we kind of have a phrase that, or at least I have a phrase that we kind of continue to use, and it's "don't waste the failing." And we described it as a failure, and although we're not going to hang our hats on that and kind of call it quits, as a coaching staff and as players, we need to recognize that, hey, there's something to be learned from this. And I think there were a lot of really good takeaways, and I think it's going to put us in a better position next week in Salt Lake City, both mentally and maybe even emotionally, to do what I think we're capable of, which is winning a national championship.
And yeah, talking about going to Salt Lake, first matchup is going to be against the defending champs, a team you also played in the regular season. So kind of talk a little bit about that matchup coming against Michigan State.
Yeah, we played Michigan State earlier in the year and had a pretty successful game, but this is, I'm sure, a very different Michigan State. I think you still need to remember this is the defending national champion, and I know they graduated quite a few guys from last year, but they've got a lot of guys that were still a part of that program from last season, and they're playing obviously much better lacrosse, as is everyone probably near the end of the season, or that's kind of the goal. So we're not taking them lightly, but it's definitely a team that we need to make sure that we're prepared for, and we spent a lot of time this week preparing specifically for them, and I think it'll be a much different game this time around.
Well, Kyle, thanks for sitting down with us. Good luck to you and your team as you guys head out to Salt Lake City this coming week to take on the national championships, and hopefully you guys will come back with the title.
Cool. Thanks, Pat.